if you haven't finished yet with your envisioning, I'm just going to shift into people sharing. Please do still give yourself the time that you need. And for those of you who have finished, is there anyone that would like to share what they hope to get out of today or what they might hope to let go of? We're not going to do the annotation. It seems to kind of, it all piles up on each other. So I'd more like to see it in the chat, or you guys unmute. To attune with others. Thank you, Mary. Yep. Yeah, the attunement is really interesting because you can't order from Lakeshore. There's no materials to create. It's something that you've got to practice and learn. And I hope to give you at least 2 practices. Well, actually, I just gave you one, the 4-7-8 breath that helps you attune inward, which can help you attune outward. But I hope to give you more practices of how to build that attunement capacity. It's really, Daniel Siegel says that attuned communication is actually one of the 9 functions of the prefrontal cortex. So anytime you do anything that helps build your prefrontal cortex, the knuckles down to the fingernails and his brain in the palm of the hand, you are promoting your capacity to do attuned interactions, communication, which is one of the 9 functions of the prefrontal cortex. Take care of myself. Yes. You can't fix everything. Yes. You can't make it better all the time. Yes. Oh, worry, anxiety, obsessions. Oh, Kimberly, I feel you. Yep. Yes. I'm glad you're here. I hope to give you some of that. You can also visit my website too, laurafishtherapy.com, if you want more information about some of that stuff. Turn off my own mind a bit so I can be truly present. Rachel, thank you for saying that. If you don't mind me building upon that, we can't turn our mind off. What I'm going to teach you to do is to use the power of attention to create choice and change. It's an unrealistic expectation for your mind to go off. Even when we sleep, our mind does things. It dreams, it integrates information. So what we're going to do is just develop a relationship where we engage our minds more skillfully. But I know what you're saying, and I'm just going to try to help you with that. Gain a greater understanding of what I'm not doing to advance my ability to attune with myself and others. Beautiful. Responsive in a time there. Not everything needs to be attended to. Yeah. Rachel, good. I'm glad that resonated. Thank you, guys. This is really helpful for me. Understand my autopilot. Nice, Nancy. Yeah, we all are on autopilot. Here's another thing. Update from neuroscientists. You need that autopilot. So we're not going to get rid of autopilot. Some of the stuff needs to be on autopilot. Like every time I try to speak to you, I don't want to be learning new vocabulary. Every time I drive, I don't want to be like, okay, how do I do this? Okay, 10 and 2, right? So some things we do on autopilot are important. It's called learned behavior. And it's because the brain is an efficiency machine. If we had to not be on autopilot all the time, it would be too challenging for the brain. Even monks do some things on autopilot. It's learning how to balance that with being present sometimes. So we do some things with mindful awareness and presence, and some things we do on autopilot. But where the non-autopilot comes in is being aware of it when you are or are not on autopilot. So parents' perspective. Okay, Anne, thank you for that. We'll do more of that next time in the next training, the 3rd one. The focus today is going to be on you, but what I teach you about yourself may help you understand the parents' perspective as well. Letting go of things that prevent you from being intentionally present. Yeah. And still live in the real world, right? So one of the things I do, I'm not a Buddhist, but there's a monastery here in Escondido near me. And it's actually Thich Nhat Hanh's, one of his monasteries. He has one in France and he has one in San Diego. And so they've opened it up to the community. You can go up for like mindfulness Sundays. And what's interesting, and the monks lead it, and half of it is in Vietnamese, and we wear headphones for those of us who speak Vietnamese. But what's interesting is the Dharma, the teaching, usually evolves around really, they're very funny. They're very humorous. They're like, non-monks tend to think they're going to turn off their mind, that they're going to be fully present, that they're, no, we aren't even that. And we live up here on a monastery. We don't have to deal with everything you guys deal with. So they really try to help us live in the real world and still have some of that stillness and presence. Especially one monk was really funny that I was speaking with. You go to lunch, they serve this great lunch. But you go to lunch and he was giggling because he was like laughing at me trying to make sense of all this, because he's like, I can't help you with it. I wear a robe all day, slippers, and I walk around. It's like, I don't know how you're going to deal with traffic and clients who are suicidal. And, I can't help you. They're just laughing. So super fun. Yep. Overthinker, anxiety. So here's something that I want to share with you guys also is it's now been reported that anxiety has outpaced depression as the #1 mental health concern in this country. So, yeah. And I know the pandemic hasn't helped with that at all, based on the fact that I'm overbooked in my private practice. Yeah. So I'm mindful of that. I'm aware of that. And everything we talk about today, including the 4 A's, is something to help you mitigate that anxiety. Yeah. Okay. I know a lot of people have their camera off, totally fine with that. I get that. I will ask you if you could, since there's only like 2 or 3 people that have a camera, if you could still use your reactions buttons every once in a while to let me know you're out there so I don't feel like I'm talking to myself. So you go to reactions and you can put a heart. Oh, Maria, you're so sweet. You don't have to turn that camera on, although I love seeing you. But if you guys could just let me know you're out there every once in a while by being in the chat or doing a reaction, that would be really helpful for me. Thank you, Megan. I appreciate it. And I see you. I appreciate you being here. But again, you guys know, thank you, Amy. You guys keep your cameras off. It's totally fine with that. I just want to know I'm with a human. I don't like hearing myself talk as much as you might find that hard to believe. I don't. And I'm an introvert, so I don't like to just talk. Okay. So let's launch. Okay. Where's the reaction button? Great question, Jasmine. It's at the bottom of your screen. It hides usually. Oh, good. Thank you, Bree. She's got it. So seeing the adult behind the behavior is what I like to call this portion of my training. So a lot of my training series is called Seeing the Child Behind the Behavior, but now we're toggling to us, starting with self, just kind of getting a compassionate understanding of ourselves. So to help us with that, I'm going to build upon what we talked about with the brain last time, but now I'm going to talk about our brain's drives. This is the human brain, cross-culturally, cross-gender. This isn't just your brain. This isn't my brain. This is all brains. The brain is designed to approach, avoid, or attach to get its needs met. So the approach mechanism drive gets activated when the brain picks up on signals of welcome, when it thinks something will be rewarding or good. The brain is driven to go toward that, to approach. Signals of welcome. The brain is driven to avoid, go away from harm or some signal of warning. And I'll pause right here. Your brain now, I don't know how old you are, I'll use myself, I'm 52. My brain has had 52 years of determining and categorizing and coming up with things based on prior knowledge, which is what we talked about last time. Prior knowledge informs the brain. It has categories for what might be welcome and what might be a sign of warning. So outside my conscious control, it can determine something is threatening or warning, right? And then I can use my mind to say, oh, no, it's okay. It's not a signal, warning, or threat. Or I could say it is, even though I didn't think it was. Okay. So our mind can impact what our brain does in terms of approach and avoid. Okay. That's a tricky concept to kind of come up with. We use both. So our brain is just a lot of times faster. We have the automatic instant brainstem activating, go toward, go away. Okay. And then the third drive is attach. And I like to think of this as engaging others. So we attach, we talked about the 4 S's of attachment last time. We'll continue to do so today. But we attach means we engage. We're tribal creatures. We engage others to try to get our needs met. Okay. But today we're also going to be appropriately or inappropriately, but today we're also going to be looking how you engage with yourself. So Peter Levine, who's a famous trauma researcher, therapist, talks a lot about trauma. He and Besser van der Kolk are two of the big names in trauma. I'm sure you've heard of them. Peter Levine, I just heard him on a podcast saying something really interesting. He said, trauma is all about a disruption in connection. And that disruption starts with ourself. So trauma is a disconnect, a harm, a violation in your life that has occurred. It's a disruption in connection. But part of the reason it becomes harrowing is we don't know how to process it within ourselves. We tend to dismiss, deny, distract, or direct. And that disruption in connection to ourselves can lead to a lot of the difficulties we have after a harrowing experience. So this isn't a training on trauma, but I can't help but bring it in because that's what's going on for many of us, is that we had that disruption in connection to ourselves. We didn't know how to identify, understand, express, and manage what we were experiencing. And perhaps when we were younger, we didn't have the guidance from adults. Right? So our drives can be skillfully worked with, right? We can use our mind to really discern, do I want to, is this a signal of welcome and I go toward, I go away, or how can I appropriately attach to get my needs met? So what are these needs? Well, like I mentioned last time I was in Illinois, we have believed to have 3 basic needs. And this is the work of Dr. Rick Hanson, Hanson, Dr. Rick Hanson. And he's done the great research to really categorize our needs as safety, satisfaction, and connection. Now, under each one of those, there's many things that we can talk about. What helps you feel physically safe? What helps you feel emotionally safe? And how intense is that need for you? That depends upon the person, right? So we can all agree that we need to feel physically safe and we need to feel emotionally safe. But how that looks changes from person to person. And emotional safety here, it's a weird phrase. People often get like the kind of confused pug look. What are you talking about, Laura? It's just a way of saying emotionally regulated, feeling in balance. It's not feeling anything, it's feeling in balance. So when we're in a place of emotional safety, we're feeling balanced enough, right? So we can still feel our emotions. We're not cut off from emotions. In fact, you can't cut off from emotions. If you're not being aware of them, they're still happening somewhere. It's energy in motion, it's somewhere. But emotional safety is about really feeling regulated with your emotions. So the brain strives to get its physical and emotional safety, to get a sense of satisfaction, and to get a sense of connection. If these basic needs are disrupted, if they are depleted, if they are at threat of being disrupted, our brain will approach, avoid, and attach to try to get those needs met. Again, through appropriate or inappropriate behavior, healthy or unhealthy behavior. Right? And the reason I bring this in is because when we are faced with a challenge and we are uncertain about how to navigate it, we may feel physically unsafe. So the pandemic, many people have felt physically unsafe. I have literally been home since March because my husband has diabetes. I don't go anywhere. I mean, I go out to a park and things like that and I wear a mask, but I'm Instacart, I'm food delivery, I cook from home. I haven't been anywhere because I'm not scared. I'm not anxious about it, but I'm aware that if I contract the virus and give it to him, it could be death for him. It could be death for me too. So this physical unsafety, this uncertainty comes in and we feel physically unsafe and then emotionally unsafe, right? What are the complications in your emotions based on the fact that you have to change what's going on for you, right? Because of the uncertainty of this pandemic and all the first times we talked about. So for you, what's that been like? And then beyond the pandemic, just the uncertainty and the challenges in your day-to-day life can feel like a disruption in your safety needs. And then satisfaction. This one kind of stumps people sometimes. Satisfaction is whatever feels satisfying to you. Satisfying enough. It's not across the finish line. Okay, I'm satisfied, that's good. It ebbs and flows all the time. So do you feel satisfied enough? If you do, your brain will feel that, and you're more likely to approach, avoid, or attach in healthy ways. And then connection. And this has been the big one that's been so controversial, and I get it, right? We do need connection, not want. These are needs. We need safety. We need satisfaction. We need connection. There's a difference between needs and wants. This is needs, right? And that's why people have been. I was just hearing all about the Chicago strike with the teachers and everything, right? Parents really putting pressure on teachers to get those kids back in the schools. And I'm not going to get political and weigh in on this here, but the idea, when my perspective is, I hear you, and we do need connection. Those kids need connection. Adults need connection. And so how do we balance out our need for physical safety with our need for connection? Big challenge we're faced with. Okay. I'm just looking. Oh, thank you guys. Okay, great. Okay, good. Yeah, take those vision breaks, please do. Really important. All right, so we've got our brain's drives, our brain's needs. Now I want us to consider settings in the brain, and I'm going to bring it all together. Okay, I'm building upon stuff here. So the settings in our brain get activated based on our brain's driving us to approach, avoid, or attach to meet the basic needs. We drive from one of two settings. We drive from the reactive setting in the brain sometimes. So for me, there's a difference between the word respond and react, not just for me, for brain scientists too. They don't mean the same thing. We use them interchangeably. But the reactive setting is when we're in this mode, we have detected signals of warning. Our brainstem and limbic center have detected signals of warning that feel overwhelming and dangerous and cross through our window of tolerance. And we flip our lids and we react from the downstairs brain. So many of you are familiar with Dan Siegel and the palm of the brain, but this is expanding upon what he talks about to say, yeah, there's a reactive setting in the brain. And there's two ways we can react. There's two zones of reactivity. The red zone, where we approach, avoid, or attach to get our safety, satisfaction, and connection needs met with fight or flight behaviors. We mobilize. Okay? We fight or we flee. This is the autonomic nervous system, the two F's of the autonomic nervous system. Or our brain detects the same danger, it reacts, and our behavior is driven to approach, avoid, or attach to get our safety, satisfaction, and connection needs met with freeze or faint behaviors, the other two F's of the autonomic nervous system. Okay? And to help you understand this, freeze and faint behaviors are really any behaviors where we're in a state of collapse, shutdown, withdrawal. We are immobilized in some way. So concrete example, had a client tell me yesterday, is that learned? Great question, Deanne. Denise, sorry, partly learned, partly genetic. Stay tuned, more on that, but great question. So I had a client yesterday who I'm going to bring in throughout this training because it might be helpful for me to just kind of link one person to some of this. So I'll call this client Laura so I can remember the name and not use her real name. So, and I'm not going to give you real details of her life. I respect her confidentiality. I'm just using it as a springboard. So Laura is 50 years old. She has an 8-year-old adopted son, a male partner she's married to. And she's coming to me in therapy originally because of a lot of anxiety. That was her presenting issue. And she's been coming to therapy off and on for about 1.5 years. So yesterday she was telling me that the 8-year-old is doing distance learning, and she is an executive at a corporation, and her husband is as well. So all of them are at home trying to do, right? You know this drill. So yesterday we're almost 1 year into this, and her, now he's 9, sorry. Her 9-year-old is knocking on her door when she has the sign up, meeting in progress, knocking. And she has told him, if it's not an emergency, write me a note, slip it under the door. She's given him lots of options. So we'll knock on her, she opened up, he's like, I want a popsicle. And she screamed at him. She yelled. right? So because of what was going on, she reacted from the downstairs brain. She got overwhelmed. She felt emotionally unsafe. She certainly wasn't satisfied. And she was feeling disconnected in the sense that I've told you 100 times, this is the drill. I'm in the middle of a meeting, right? So from a brain perspective, she flipped her lid, she reacted, she yelled. Yep. If she shut down, withdrew, closed the door on him, it could be either a planned thing or it could just be, I got nothing here. I'm overwhelmed. I'm just going to not deal with this. Okay. But blue zone behaviors can be much more serious than that. When we see a child in the classroom that goes selectively mute, that could be blue zone behaviors. They're immobilizing because their nervous system is picking up on threats. Warning, warning, warning. So just to consider for yourself right now, do you recognize you toggling between red zone and blue zone? Or do you feel like, I'm mostly a red zone kind of gal. I don't do a lot of blue zone, right? Just a curiosity, just a wondering of what that looks like for yourself. The goal is for the brain to get their safety satisfaction, your safety satisfaction connection needs met. And we approach, avoid, and attach in reactive ways sometimes. We all do, human beings. We do not want to set a goal to never be reactive. It is not achievable. And it's not even a good idea, because if I'm driving on the freeway and someone cuts me off, I want to react very quickly. I want to flee that lane. So it's an adaptation human beings have. We're wired to do this because it can keep us safe. And sometimes shutdown can keep us safe. It's just not a go-to strategy, right? We don't want to overuse it. So what else is there? Well, there's the responsive setting in the brain too. In this mode, we respond from an integrated brain, not just the upstairs brain. I hear it all the time. People say, oh, I'm in my upstairs brain. If you're in your upstairs, your downstairs is connected. See how they're connected? This is your downstairs. If your upstairs is online, they're connected. So you're in your integrated brain. All the parts are connected. And from this place, we tend to be responsive rather than reactive. Okay? This is called the green zone. We approach, avoid, and are attached to get our safety satisfaction needs met with what Dr. Stephen Porges, Porges, calls socially engaging healthy behaviors. Steve Porges is responsible for the polyvagal theory, which is often used and spoken about in trauma. I'm not going to get into it in depth today, but I do draw upon it. I like to give people credit when I draw upon their work to inform mine. So in this green zone, in this integrated brain, we're more responsive. That doesn't mean that we don't feel challenged. That doesn't mean that everything is perfect. It does not mean that. It means that despite what's going on around us, we feel safe, satisfied, and connected enough that we can navigate challenges from a place of responsivity. Let me say that again so I make sure you hear me. To be in the green zone, to be responsive, life doesn't have to be perfect. You still have challenges. You still have to get in traffic. You still have to do your job. You still have to do the laundry. You still have to cook, feed people, clean the house, care for an elder parent, help a disabled child, help a pet that's going through kidney disease. There's still life. It's when we are feeling resourced enough, we can do life from the green zone. Okay. So in this case, what that might have looked like for my client, Laura, is just to pause and to consider how her son might have felt unsafe, dissatisfied, disconnected, to take a 360 view in the moment. And when she did, she realized that day she'd been in meetings all day. So this was 4 o'clock in the afternoon and she'd been in meetings all day. He was feeling disconnected, unsatisfied, and emotionally unsafe as an only child with no friends, just being in the home alone all day, right? So in that moment, then she could have responded with, I'm going to call him Jacob. Jacob, I understand. You're missing having engagement with me today. I get it. I know, honey. What can you do when you need a popsicle? I can just go get one. Yeah, I'll be done in 5 minutes, right? So just doesn't mean she didn't consider her perspective. She was still annoyed. She was still frustrated, but she coupled that with an understanding. She interpersonally attuned and then interpersonally attuned to Jacob and was like, oh, no wonder. And even if the context wasn't that balancing for her, even if it was still like, no, I've only been in one meeting today. How can you be in the green zone and respond rather than react to whatever challenges arise? A child knocking on your door, disrupting you when you've had agreements about not doing that. A challenge at work with a coworker. We're going to look at what is it for you that promotes and strengthens your ability to be in the green. Okay. Oh, thank you, Emily. Emily asked, downstairs and upstairs brain, is that referring to executive functioning in neocortex versus of limbic system? So real quick, great question, Emily. I'll just go real quick into this. Daniel Siegel talks about the brain developing like a house. The first part of the brain to develop is your brainstem and limbic center. It's currently believed, hear me say currently believed, may change in 10 years. So that was likened to the downstairs of a house. First part to be developed, babies come out of the womb, this is fully developed. It can change over the lifespan, but it's fully developed. The upstairs brain, if we close this part of your hand, the upstairs brain is your neocortex, yeah, but it's also other regions in the brain. It's the full upstairs brain. We often talk about the prefrontal cortex in our work, where it's believed that executive function skills are housed. But executive function skills, the ability to plan, initiate, organize, carry out a task, shift gears when necessary, regulate your emotions, resolve conflicts as they arrive, and monitor your ability to do so, those skills, housed in the prefrontal cortex, but they are informed by information from the brainstem and limbic center. Yeah, so the limbic system and the brainstem inform what happens in the upstairs brain as well. They interact with each other. All parts are touching. Unless we have too many signals of warning, we're feeling unsafe, unsatisfied, disconnected, or one or more. Through our window of tolerance, we get out of balance and we flip our lid and we react from the downstairs brain. And for most adults, it doesn't look like throwing themselves on the floor, kicking and screaming. It doesn't look like, you know, all the things we see in children. For us, it can be overeating. For us, it can be over drinking. For us, it can be yelling. For us, it can be shaming and blaming ourselves and others. For us, it may look different, but it can still be classified as reactivity. And the way to kind of gauge that is if you walk away and say to yourself, oh, crackers, that didn't feel good. Or maybe it felt good for me to yell and scream, but I wonder what damage I did to the other person, right? So there's no judgment about it, but there's just an awareness and just kind of an attuned engagement towards yourself to learn about this. So reactive and responsive. And someone asked earlier, but I'll go back to it now. It is believed that a combination of genes and experience influence this development in our brain over time. And the thing I'm interested, the scope of my work today, there's many different ways to go with this. I deal with this every day with my clients in private practice, but for the content of our work, we're focused on the challenges, the uncertainty that comes from challenges, and the way we navigate that impacts whether we strengthen the reactive setting, red or blue zones, or the responsive setting, okay? So that's why I recommended last time you consider how often do you dismiss, deny, distract, or direct when challenges arise? Because those 4 Ds over time, too much, out of balance, doing it often can strengthen the reactive setting. While in contrast, the 4 A's can strengthen this responsive setting. Don't trust me about that. I'll prove it to you. I'm just forecasting. You don't have to believe me. Will you host that brain course again? It's already closed. Maria, tell me more about that. I'm happy to answer that. I'm happy to do anything with you guys. I love working with you guys.
I can take that. Where EITP is hosting a growing brain session So they were just asking about that.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah, and I'm not part of that, so I'm not involved in that. I'm happy to be if somebody wants me to be, but I'm not right now. Okay. So any questions about that? This is my introduction to settings. We're gonna go deeper with it, but I just wanted to kind of give you the overview of it, the 50,000 foot level. Okay. So let's take a look. Thank you, Michelle. Let's take a look at a child in a preschool. You're going to hear the adult. She's off camera. And what I'd like you to do as you watch this is I want you to consider, this is a challenging situation. And I just want you to wonder about settings in the brain, drives, and needs. Just be curious about that. What comes up for you now that you've been exposed to the brain's drives, approach, avoid, and attach, the needs, SSC, safety, satisfaction, and connection, and settings? And just consider, both for the adult and the child, what might be happening in their brain. Okay. Share my screen so I can. Do you guys ever have it where you can't find your mouse? I feel like half my life I just end up searching for my mouse. 21st century. All the time she says, thank God, shared humanity. Man, I think I would get back a full hour of my day if I didn't have to be looking for my mouse. Okay, here we go. First world problems. Oh, crackers, did I engage I want to make sure. Oh, yep, sound and audio. Okay, good. So you guys should be able to hear this.
Come in here. Look. Now,
well, you in timeout.
Look. My bracelet came out.
I'll put it back on. You in timeout.
It's no excuse.
Don't say you supposed to be back in timeout. I didn't say get out. You and Jayla in timeout.
Well, let me tell you this, Linda.
My name ain't Linda. So you sit right there in timeout, little bad little girl.
No, let me tell you something.
No, don't tell me.
If I wasn't here, I would surely take a day off from you and then a day off from these kids. I'm around the classroom. I'm just done with you.
I'm done with you too, but you in timeout.
Oh, let me tell you something, honey. This is not gonna leave.
You're gonna be in timeout.
Oh.
That's why you in timeout right now.
I think so.
I think so.
Well, when I get up out of town and go to bed, I will be glad to go home and enjoy the rest of my life. And I completely quit school because all of you.
So last time I was in Illinois, I showed this video, but has so much in it that I want to continue to explore it. My mouth is dropping. I know, Kimberly. I know. I've seen it so many times and I still get nauseous. So let's explore it. What's coming up for you around needs, drives, settings? Just share with me. Just whatever's coming up for you. Yeah. Who is that little one channeling? Yeah. Let's look at drives, needs, settings. All of what you're saying is really good. Let's just try to make sure we link it to what we're learning here. The child's not being heard. Yeah. And as a result, Denise, what do you think is happening to her safety, satisfaction, connection needs? What setting in her brain or zones are getting strengthened? What might be happening? Is she approaching? Is she avoiding? Is she attaching? Okay, I love all these comments. Let's get to safety, satisfaction, connection, needs, drives, settings, okay? So maybe I'm not guiding it well. Let me see. She's not feeling any connection. Okay, really nice, Denise. That's a great hypothesis. She doesn't feel connected because people were saying she doesn't feel heard. To feel connected, we need to feel heard. I think she's attaching by taking control. She's attempting to try to take control, right? She's trying to attempt to be heard, to get her needs met. This is, if we could be in that little girl's brain, it's like, all hands on deck, all hands on deck. Safety, satisfaction, needs being threatened. I'm being shamed and blamed, and I'm being punished. I'm in timeout. Do what you can, do what you can. Okay, so let's consider, what zone of the brain do you think this child's in? Is she in the reactive setting or responsive setting? It's interesting. What do you think? Green zone or red zone? Reactive. Okay. What else? Anybody else think that? Yep. Red zone. Okay. Fight or flight. A little bit of both. Interesting, Denise. Yep. Red. Fight or flight. She is developing a negative reaction. Absolutely. Red zone. Red zone. She told her caregiver, when I go home, I will feel better. No safety at school. So you think she's in fight or flight? Yeah. Red zone. Green zone is learned in both, yet the green zone is learned inappropriately. Okay. Red zone, both. I'm impressed with her not crying. Okay. Great. Thank you, guys. So this is a super challenging video. That's why I use it, because she's pushing back on this woman. Some people call it she's arguing with her, and she's fighting with her. So it looks like the red zone, right? And this is where our values, perceptions, beliefs come in about realistic expectations for child-adult interactions. But I have a wondering, could this be green zone behavior? She's identifying, understanding, expressing her thoughts, her feelings, her perceptions, her beliefs. You may not think it's appropriate what she's saying. Some people may not think it's appropriate. Some people think it's fully appropriate. She's not, she's emotionally regulated. She's feeling strong emotions, but her body's not dysregulated. Yeah. So just think about it. Although, because the idea, I wanted you to remember that in the green zone, when we're in the green zone, our brain is integrated. It doesn't mean things are going perfectly. It means we engage with a challenge from a place of balance. I have a wondering about her really being in balance in this moment, right? In this moment, because she's been on the planet 4 years. But here's the danger. If she has repeated experiences like this, what may happen to her ability to stay integrated? If she starts learning that she's a bad girl, that she's in jail, are you kidding me? She starts integrating those labels and those names in that narrative, she could end up developing the reactive setting because it crosses through her window of tolerance and she has no tolerance for that. Right now, she seems pretty tolerant of it. Yeah, it's just a wondering, you guys, because when I see this, I see it as green zone behavior from the little girl. I see it as red zone behavior from the adult, right? So it's just a wonder. I might be wrong. You might be right. It's not about right or wrong. It's about the exploration. It's using what we know. So if this child started to push all the blocks off the shelf, as she was saying this, if she started to kick at the teacher, that would seem more reactive to me. But the fact that she's having a debate with her, listen, Linda, this is what's going on. It seems to me like she's actually responding rather than reacting. The red zone, I would think, is her needing to defend herself. Great question, Denise. No, you can have a need to protect your safety, satisfaction, connection from the green. So when we try to, it looks like what you call defending yourself. It's, if we can look at it with what we're learning today, the flip side of that is I'm trying to get my safety, satisfaction, and connection needs met by describing to you my perspective. Here's my perspective, Linda. Okay. So it's coming from the green zone. You can also defend yourself or search for your safety, satisfaction, connection from the red or the blue zones for sure. You can kick, bunch, bite, scream, yell, call each other names, have any inappropriate, non-socially engaging behavior can come from the red and blue zone to try to get your safety, satisfaction, connection needs met. Does that make sense? Yeah, there is a more sensitive way to communicate, Ollie, for sure. And what I'm inviting you to do is connect that belief, I'm right there with you, Ollie, to safety, satisfaction, connection, needs, drives, and settings. I think one of the downsides about showing this video is it activates us a lot, right? So then we get into like, oh my gosh, what do the adults do? You know, great, all true. And let's bring it back to the brain. Okay, great. So let's just take a peek at the adult for the second, right? A lot of focus was on the child. Do you feel like perhaps, this is just our guess, we don't know, I don't know either. Do you think the adult felt safe, satisfied, and connected? What's your best guess? Here come the no's. No, we don't know this woman. We don't know what's going on for her. I don't know her life, is how I like to say it. What I know and what I can observe is that something's not feeling good for her because of the way she's acting and speaking with the child. Now, some of that might be learned, and she might think that's an okay way to talk with a child. And I may disagree. I do disagree. But it's also coming from a place of scarcity and deficit where she has flipped her lid and she's reacting to the child, right? Especially when she brings in the part about jail, right? Okay. So she is approaching the child and attaching with the child in inappropriate ways. There's another way to attach this child. We don't know what this child did. And that's what I love about this video too. I don't care what this child did. No matter what this child did, this is not appropriate. Okay. So there's a more appropriate way to help navigate through whatever challenge has arisen. And for some reason, this person's not feeling safe, satisfied, or connected enough to be able to use her integrated brain in socially engaging ways, including maybe she hasn't had enough training on how to work with children with challenging behavior. Notice I didn't say a challenging child. Child first language. Okay. Yeah, not sure why she would be recording this. That's a great question. I didn't record this. This isn't one of my coaching sessions. This was given to me. Yeah. Okay. So this is our first attempt at just trying to use what we're learning in vivo, in the moment, about safety, satisfaction, connection, the brain's drives, and the settings and zones. Okay. So what I want you to do to toggle back to self, let's bring it back to you, is this is an example of in the here and now as an adult, part of your predilection to react versus respond, or how you go about approaching, avoiding, or attaching to get your safety, satisfaction, and connection needs met. That all in the here and now, you started to learn that in the there and then. So some of us had experiences like this. We were shamed and blamed. We were punished in ways that perhaps compromised our trust in adults or trust in school, trust in society as a person of color, so that we didn't feel safe, satisfied, and connected enough. And we learned to approach, avoid, and attach in ways that felt like they were appropriate to our survival, but they might not necessarily help us thrive. And then the other piece that I want you to consider is that if children are dismissed, denied, distracted, and directed in this way, instead of the 4 A's, and if you were in this way, then no wonder that there are times that you flip your lid and you react versus respond. You didn't learn how to use your socially engaging behaviors when a challenge arose. You did your best you could. You do sometimes. But if this is the early exposure, that you're less likely to be able to stay in this social engaging place because you're not being skillfully attuned to, you're not being acknowledged. You're not, there's no adopting a stance of co-regulation or involving you in collaborating to work through the challenge. We're in about 20 minutes, we're going to take a formal break. I do continue to, invite you to take breaks, move around the eye gaze breaks that they're offering you, but I will take a formal break an hour and a half in, which is at 12. But right now we're going to switch to a poll. And I wanted to remind you that these polls are anonymous. I think I forgot to say that last time. I can see how many people have answered, but I don't know who answered what. So your privacy is protected. It's an attempt to help you feel safe, satisfied, and connected. So if you would just take a few moments to answer this poll, I'll be quiet. And then when we have enough people who have answered, we'll share the results.
Just a reminder, there are 5 questions in this poll, so don't forget to scroll down and get all 5 of those in there.
Oh, thank you, Bree. Good tip. Okay, it looks like about 46 out of 53 have voted, about 88%. Oh, we're up to 48. Nice. Just gonna get ready to close the poll in just a few more seconds. Okay, great. I'm going to share the results. So the reason I do the polls isn't just because it's a fun little Zoom trick. It's a place for you to pause to consider your relationship to the learning, coupled with an opportunity for me to tune in to you and to consider what I might need to shift in what I'm doing based on your answers. So I just want to take a quick moment to review these. So this first one, when you're feeling challenged, I was asking just, is this what you normally do? You tune inward and you consider, am I feeling safe? Am I feeling satisfied? Am I feeling connected? Are my needs met? Which part am I driving from? Am I approaching? Am I avoiding? Am I attaching? It's just to kind of get a sense of where you're at. I know you guys are professionals. You've had a lot of training, and a lot of people had said to me last time, this was a good review. I'm like, okay, so you've had this material. And the thing I don't have when I get hired to do something at a program is the opportunity to say, okay, what trainings have they have? What do they already know? Where's everybody at? And even if I had that, if I have 30 people in the room, there's 30 different levels of understanding of certain material. So this helps me. So people say, 29% of the people say, yeah, I already do this. I already consider, am I feeling safe, satisfied, connected, approach, avoid, attach. This is what I do. 23% said false, 46 some of the time, and one person wasn't understanding the question. And I put that there because it can be a challenging question. I hope I made that question more clear now to that person. If I didn't, please ask me to clarify more. I already knew about the brain settings and zones, and I typically consider this information. So 15%, 7 people said, yep, I already do this. So that's excellent. Hopefully today I can help you apply this towards challenging situations. 46% said false, 40% some of the time. Okay, great. So most of you are familiar with this information, but you're not sure you actually apply it in the moment, and maybe this could be helpful. And almost everyone said they want to learn how to be more responsive. Yeah, me too. And if you're not sure yet, that's totally fine. Maybe by the end of the day, you'll learn some things to become more responsive, and it will help you. When the reactive setting gets activated, I notice I'm most likely in, and this was the most controversial questions. Funny, people are like, wait, what? The idea was just an invitation to tune in and be like, okay, knowing myself, when I'm picking up on signals of warning, when I feel what you might call overwhelmed, stressed, emotionally dysregulated, dismissed, denied, not considered, whatever feels like a signal of warning for your brain, do I tend to fight? Do I tend to get out of there, avoid, flee, move away from the situation? Do I freeze or faint? I put these two together because very few people would answer faint. That's a pretty extreme reaction by the nervous system. That's why we no longer let babies cry it out, because we realized they were going into faint mode a lot of time. So this is, and it's more about dissociation. A lot of times when people have been through trauma, they dissociate. So I just like to kind of put those two together. The idea is, do you tend to use the blue zone more than the red zone? But even within the red zone, which one do you use? Which flavor sticks out for you, fighting or fleeing? Without judgment, right? Without judgment. And if you don't know, this is just an invitation. Start to notice. We are absolutely socialized to tune outward, to consider what's happening outside of us. So if you aren't aware yet of how this impacts you, no judgment on yourself. We aren't taught to consider this. Okay. And then in terms, I'm just checking in about your relationship with the 4Ds. Like, how valuable do you still think they are? And people are saying sometimes it's still valuable. I agree. And here's why. Sometimes you're in a moment, like if I'm in, when I used to work for an agency, I used to work for WestEd Center for Child and Family Studies. I did a lot of the teaching pyramid, or CEPHL or CCEPHL, you guys might know, came from Vanderbilt. When I'd be in meetings with coworkers, something might have felt like a signal of warning for me, or a signal of challenge. And I might say to myself, I'm not going to deal with that right now, right? I might distract myself. I might dismiss it in the moment, or I might be like, it's no big deal. But where this can get troublesome is if that's our go-to, our de facto way we react to challenges, and we never loop back. So even in the moment, if you might dismiss or deny and you think that's useful, I hear you. But do you overdo it? And then do you not loop back? I had someone in a training I was doing yesterday say she noticed her go-to for distraction was cleaning. And I'm like, well, that's healthy, right? That feels good. Like it helps you settle. She said, yeah, it helps me settle. So I think distracting's good. And I said, let me ask you this though. Do you then loop back to what was happening and try to respond from the green zone? She's like, no. So that's where it can get challenging, where we just use the 4Ds in ways that we just try to sweep it under the rug and move on from an imbalanced place. Some of the time we do need to move on, but if we have a build up of that we dismiss, deny, distract, and direct to move on versus the 4As, then we are not learning the socially engaging ways to deal with it over time in a way that might feel really good to our nervous system. Because here's the thing, if we push it away, it goes somewhere. Okay. Any feedback or questions about that? Thank you guys for participating in the poll. Nice. Okay. Lost my cursor again. Sorry, I won't get annoying by reporting that every time. I'll keep that to myself. I'll dismiss that. Yeah, push away, it goes somewhere. So here's my evidence for that. I don't know if I've ever heard anybody else talk about it this way, but when I see the word emotion, E-M-O-T-I-O-N, I think of E-motion, energy in motion. Emotions are just energy. And so sometimes we think of that energy as an upshift. It's positive. We feel happy. We feel joyful. We feel surprised. We feel excited. We feel exuberant. It's just energy. We just label it in those ways, right? And then sometimes that energy in motion isn't excitatory. It actually is either too excitatory, like anxiety, or it's inhibitory, depressed, sad, confused, lonely, or worried, anxious, fearful. So it's energy. If we don't pay attention to that energy, it still can pay attention to us. And that's why Bessar van der Kolk wrote his seminal work on trauma, The Body Keeps the Score. So it's learning to intrapersonally attune to what is, our thoughts, our feelings, our perceptions, our beliefs, our behaviors, because that's an important part of us learning to be in balance and develop these parts of our brain that we know can be super helpful to us. So we don't feel as obsessed and anxious and worried and out of control and out of balance and stressed. Yep. And often it takes going to classes. Often it takes learning, studying, maybe going to a therapist to learn how to do this. My point is we aren't naturally taught this in school. And certainly the videotape we saw in school was sometimes we were taught the opposite. Yeah. And then where we were reliant upon learning it was in our home life. And many of our parents did the best they could to teach it, but they were taught it and they were doing the best they could. My parents often listen to my trainings or come to my trainings, and my parents are still amazing people. I had an amazing childhood. I was very lucky. And yet my mom had anxiety, really intense anxiety. So she couldn't give me what she didn't have. She got spun up a lot. So there was a lot of messages to just shut down, just to deal with it. Dismiss, deny, distract, direct. Do it because I said so. Not a lot of attuning to the child behind the behavior. My dad did that. My dad was able to attune to the child behind behavior. So I was blessed that I got a balance, that I did have at least one person in my life that was able to do that consistently. My mom could do it when she wasn't anxious, but she got hijacked by anxiety a lot. I get it. So I had to go out and learn this. I had to teach this to myself to be able to do this. So, and there weren't a lot of risk factors in my childhood home growing up. So you can imagine for other people, and I know from my 25, 30 years of experience doing this, other people didn't even have anybody. And there was threat and danger and warning all over the place. So anxiety has outpaced depression as our number one mental health concern, but depression's right on its heels. And we have more mental health issues than ever in this country. And it's just this epidemic of people reacting from the downstairs brain. Okay, great. I'm glad that's resonating for some of you. So let's keep going, exploring more. So for those of you who are like, I'm still not sure yet, let me catch up. I'm hoping this can help. So when the brain detects the signals of warning, and again, that can be your brain right now as an adult. Warning can be you didn't get to get your cup of coffee in the morning. Warning can be your kids knocking on your door when you're doing a meeting. Warning can be the dog had an accident in the living room, right? We're not judging. It's your brain. Whatever your brain detects as warning or welcome. Namaste. I'm out of it. That's yours. I'm not judging it. Okay. It's just you being curious about it. When your brain detects signals of warning and you're not feeling safe, satisfied, and connected enough, your stress response system may react versus respond from the downstairs brain. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. It means your brain is wired to protect you. Okay. So this reactive setting, something is missing, something is wrong. That's another way to think of it. So I'm trying to go deeper to help you really get this. So in your personal life, you might be detecting warning as something's missing, something's wrong. And maybe I have a skewed view on this because what I do for a living is I'm a therapist. So people come to me to tell me about what's missing and what's wrong. But I also have a personal life. And I hear a lot of the people in my personal life talking about a lot of what's missing and a lot of what's wrong. And that's okay. I'm not saying don't talk about it, but it is amazing that we have so much of that. And part of that is because we have the negativity bias in the brain. We tend to have what Rick Hansen calls Velcro for the bad and Teflon for the good. So when something's missing and something's wrong, it activates these settings in our brain. It activates this danger, danger, danger. And of course, you can imagine over the evolution of humans, same with animals, what's more important to pay attention to? Safety or danger? Arguable. But if you miss the lion today, the danger, you might not be able to get the carrot tomorrow, the welcome. So my job is to help you learn how to notice both and try to balance both. My job as a therapist, if you were coming to me as therapy. Today, it's to expose you to this information, to know that one of the reasons your brain might notice and name the negative more is because that negativity bias in your brain, which is part of your reactivity setting, is very strongly developed, overly developed, based on a confluence of genes and experience, most likely. But it can change. That's the good news. I had an 80-year-old client and 2 clients a couple of years ago. I haven't had, usually elderly people don't come to therapy, but it was great to have them. And one of the things the wife said was, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. And I'm like, actually you can. It's harder. It's easier earlier, as Bruce Perry likes to say, which is why we do early intervention, but it's not over later. But this is just an understanding why it might be tougher for you at this stage in your life or how you got to this place of reactivity. So another way to consider red zone versus blue zone. If you're activated from the red zone, you're in a state of hyperarousal, mobilizing energy. And that's adaptive in some ways. Sometimes that's good. Overdone, not good. Or if you're in the blue zone, you're in a state of hypoarousal, okay, which is immobilizing. So I want to bring us to the animal world for a second to kind of understand this. Did you guys ever watch like a National Geographic show, Mutual of Omaha, for those of you who are old like me? I don't know what the updated version is now, but I say Mutual of Omaha to like my niece and nephew. They're like, what? It was the 70s. So you would watch a lion chasing a gazelle, right? Because the lion is like, oh, dinner, let me go get that. And the gazelle flees. Loved that show. Oh, good, Nancy, someone is as old as me. So the gazelle flees, right? So the gazelle's nervous system went, oh, danger, bing, I'm gonna get out of there. So they're fleeing, so they're en route, they're in chase. And mammals, the animals are wired to flee like that when there's danger. But there's a mechanism in their brain that when they feel like it's not gonna go somewhere, it's not working out for them, they haven't escaped, they tend to faint. They go in, they feign death because the lion prefers live prey, prefers to kill its prey, bring it back to the den and eat it. A lion may abandon prey if it's dead, okay? So it's very fainting goats, exactly. So it's biological mechanism in the brain. So we watch this gazelle, he flees, and then he drops to the ground and feigns death. He faints. If he's lucky enough for the lion to leave, he gets up off the ground, and every time, not some of the time, you will see him shake and then run off, or shake as he runs off. Well, Dr. Stephen Porges, through the polyvagal theory, points out that that is something that the animal does because he's going from the blue zone, hypoarousal, dissociation, fainting, collapsing, immobilization. And he has to go up through the red zone, mobilizing that energy to get back to the green. And so do we. So one way, 2 o'clock, thank you. One way that you can notice this in human beings is, do you ever see when babies get very upset, they may shake, they may cry, they do a lot of shaking. So it's a natural human response. What happens is we learn that looks weird or strange. So we learn not to do it as we get older, but kids do it, dogs do it. So the idea is if you have a tendency to get to the blue, to go hypoarousal, to immobilize, to freeze, to shut down, to collapse, just know that that stage, that blue zone reaction is going to require you to try to mobilize that energy to get back to balance. So this is why people talk about going for a walk, doing some sort of movement. I actually teach my clients how to shake. It's called TRE. It's a TRE method. If you're interested, email me privately. It's a way to mobilize that energy in a safe way to get back to the green. Okay. We're getting close to our break. I just want to finish this slide and then I'll give you guys that time. Here's the deal. Someone asked me earlier, is this learned? This can develop from a state of being. So you could be in a state of reactivity into a trait over time. So that teacher that we saw in the video, again, I don't know her, I'm using her as an example. But one thing we might hypothesize is she had enough repeated experiences of reactivity throughout her lifespan that she's developed a trait of being reactive when danger arises, okay? And my hypothesis with the little girl is she still had the trait of being responsive, but she's at risk of developing a trait of being reactive if she has these repeated experiences. So Rick Hanson talks about moving from state to trait. So our experiences are opportunities for being in different states. I feel reactive, I feel responsive, I feel happy, I feel sad, I feel optimistic, I feel pessimistic. These are states of being that can become traits where you start to say, oh, I'm a pessimistic person. Oh, I'm a depressed person. Oh, I'm an anxious person, right? States to traits. Yeah, Denise feels like the little girl is already there. Perhaps, I mean, again, this is just my opinion. I felt like she was in the green zone there. But the fact that she was saying she's going to quit school, very scary. Very evidence of red flag, red flag. We may lose this little girl. She may learn to just all of a sudden think like, there's nothing here for me. So I'm with you on that, Denise. I'm hopeful though, that we can still save that little girl. So state to a trait over time, influenced by genetics and experience. So when children have repeated experiences, so you as a child, when you had repeated experiences of something was dangerous or your brain was picking up a sign of warning, and if you didn't get effective co-regulation, and effective is judged by your brain, in your mind, what you felt was effective throughout your lifespan, then your brain, our brains get wired to react versus respond. And another way to put it is we move from connection to protection. So when we fight or flee, we're not activating our socially engaging behaviors, our green zone, our responsive setting to connect with the other person in healthy ways. We're more in a mode of protection. I'm wondering if that resonates for you, that you feel like if you know you're in a place where you're fighting with someone or you're fleeing or you're collapsing, you're immobilizing, you don't feel safe. You're feeling like I need to protect myself. I noticed that in me. if I cross through my window of tolerance and my SSC needs aren't met, I have all these skills, you guys. I know this stuff. I teach this stuff. But if I personally am not resourced, I can find myself immobilizing and collapsing. It just breaks through my window of tolerance because I just don't feel, especially for me, connection. If I don't feel felt by my partner, I can be likely to go into collapse. Just make myself small, make myself disappear based on genes and experience. Okay. So the 4 Ds, we want to explore how they might impact the moving this setting of being reactive to a state of being reactive to a trait. So if you as a child had a challenge or challenges and you were repeatedly told, there's nothing to worry about, you're fine, don't worry about it, just move on. You may not learn how to skillfully respond from the green zone to challenges, okay? And the 2 risks that I mentioned last time of the 4 Ds, the lack of trust or sense of safety and connection with adults, and the lack of learned skills may also promote this reactivity because you don't feel safe, satisfied, and connected. This is complicated stuff to pull together and actually understand it from our autobiography. So I want you to be gentle and compassionate with yourself, but do invite yourself to consider how this might have impacted you, that without judgment towards our parents, right? Or the people in our life. It's like just using it as data without it becoming about shaming and blaming others. It's just about, what did I get? What did I receive? What was my experience? And oh, this is how it might have wired me to be more reactive than responsive. Compassion, loving kindness, and non-judgment if we can. Sometimes it's hard. Okay, great. Oh, thank you, Mary. And believe the co-dysregulation is skillful at pushing others away. Mary, can you say more about that? About what does believe the co-dysregulator, sorry, my eyes, is skillful at pushing others there. Yeah, say more about that, Mary, to everyone if you can. Anybody else have a comment before we go on we're going to take about just a formal 5-minute break, because you could take breaks anytime, but we're going to just take a shut down, get up 5-minute break if nobody has any other questions. This is just so, helpful. Oh, good. Oh, I'm so glad, Emily. Yeah, COVID really inspired me to start doing these trainings in this way. This is always information I've used, but I personally and then professionally seeing what COVID has activated in us is very powerful. Shared humanity. Okay, I'm still interested, Mary, in what you had to say, but let's get everybody to the break. And I will see you guys at 12. Oh, you guys are 2 hours ahead at 2:13. Let's just say 2:15. I'll see you at 2:15.
Laura, you're muted, by the way.
I'm used to us talking in here and no one really responding. So I wouldn't have noticed that. Thank you. We were having a meeting. You guys did. I thought you guys were there, but you weren't. And it's really hard because I don't see anybody. Oh, thank you. I see Kathy and is it Totiana? Did I get your name right? Say it for me, will you?
Tatiana.
Tatiana. I just love the spelling. Thank you for being there. I appreciate it. Great. Oh, there's Maria again. Thank you, you guys. It's been great. Thank you.
Fish, how are you?
Good.
Hi.
Who is this? Wait, I'm going to find
This
you.
is
Where?
Ollie. Did I go off the screen? Oh, wait a minute.
There you
I'm
are.
clicking
Oh, no.
too fast. Here I am. Hi.
Hi. Good to see you. Thank you so much.
It's great to see you today.
Thank you. Great to see you guys. And listen, I'm totally down with you not having the cameras on. There's no shame and blame in that because you guys are going into the chat and everything. I really appreciate it.
But I don't mind having the camera on, but I don't always know if I should have it on. And when I clicked it to unmute it to say something earlier, it's mentioned, oh, you have to go back to mute. And I went, back on mute, took the picture off.
There's a lot to navigate. There's a lot
do
of
have a
moving
question.
parts. Yeah, go. Yeah.
It's in response to that person in the daycare setting, the teacher.
Yeah.
So typically parents, when they come in to pick their kids up, they want to know their kids are behaving beautifully all day. Okay, no issues. But then you'd have a teacher that might say something about how terrible her child was during that day. So where does the little girl get support if the teacher's not giving it and the parents get this conversational thing and they're trying to save face and they don't stand up for the daughter? Who helps her?
Yeah.
And so her reaction all the time is going to be that what looks like combativeness because of how she's met and no one's explaining anything and trying to be sensitive and try to figure out what's the best way to have her learn through this process.
Absolutely.
It's being condemned.
Yep.
That's another word. That's a C word though.
Yeah. But it feels like that, right? It feels like that.
Right. And I've seen it because I've worked in daycares, like going in to do therapy.
Yeah.
And I know they're working with a lot of kids, but goodness.
Yeah. So one of our jobs, and we all have different roles, but it's the shared commitment we all have is to try to teach adults in children's lives, starting with ourselves, to try to use compassionate speech. So really when that teacher and that parent are connecting about the child's behavior, how can we language it in child first language in ways that we see the child behind the behavior? So we don't dismiss or deny the challenges, but we talk about it with compassionate speech is what you're saying. And children do need, not want, some sort of safe haven, some place that even if their behavior is challenging, they know they are still completely seen, soothed, safe, and secure. So I don't have an answer for that, but all this work is meant to inform the answer to that, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it's how we take it and then how we share with others.
Y'all got to share it.
See that in appropriate.
Y'all got to share it in a non-shaming and blaming way too, right? We have to do to others as we hope to be done to ourselves, and we hope to be done to the children. So those parents, there, but for the grace, they're doing the best they can. They don't know about reactive responsive. They're probably doing exactly what was done to them. So we just invite them to consider, you cannot expect your child all day long at program to have perfect behavior. That's unrealistic. Children are going to feel scared. They're going to feel angry. They're going to feel frustrated. They're going to have all these different emotions that may lead to some challenges in behavior, but it's up to us as providers to be able to attune to the child and help to teach them how to do more of that from the green zone. And for children, it's harder because this part of their brain isn't fully developed. So the parent coming in, was he good or was he bad? Totally unrealistic. How can we help the parent understand that question in and of itself is not something that we try to scan for? So there's just ebbs and flows throughout the day. And sometimes your child was behaving, and sometimes your child felt scared or felt stressed, didn't want to share because he had been sharing all day, right? So it's an ongoing conversation of how to describe and see the child behind the behavior. But because we're the adults, we got to start with ourselves. How do we do it, right?
Absolutely.
Great question. Thank you, Ollie.
You're welcome.
Yeah. We do need, everybody needs more education. I'm constantly getting educated. We need the teachers too, the parents too. And then things change. I mean, in the first training I talked to you, we used to think that the brain was fully developed mid-20s. Now we're thinking it's late 20s, early 30s. So
Yes.
it's ongoing. We got to change. Okay.
All right.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, so thank you, Ali. So now we're going to move to really casting us a closer look at the responsive setting in the brain. This is where everybody was like, oh, I wish I could be more responsive. Me too. I do a lot in order to activate this setting in the brain and be in the green zone as often as I can. And yet it's unrealistic to think you will be there all day. We may go up and down throughout our nervous system throughout the day based on safety, satisfaction, and connection. So there's no strive for perfection. There's strive for really being curious, open, accepting, and loving about what helps us build and strengthen the green as adults. So to respond from the green zone, just a reminder, the brain needs to detect more signals of welcome than warning, which means despite what's going on, it doesn't have to be perfect. I've said that 4 times now. I really want you guys to get that. You can still have challenges arise. But if challenges are rising, we may see them not as signals of warning if we are feeling safe, satisfied, connected enough. And if, in general, we feel seen, soothed, safe, and secure. So this is why people can have very different responses or reactions to things based on the setting, the context they're in. So I know for people in my personal life, they don't feel seen, soothed, safe, and secure at work. They are part of organizations where they're marginalized, they're not lifted up, they're shamed and blamed. The culture of the corporation is toxic. So they go to work every day bracing, their nervous system is bracing because they don't feel safe, satisfied, or connected, or seen, safe, soothed, and secure. So they're more vulnerable to reacting, okay? But at home, in their personal life, not as much because they feel seen, soothed, safe, and secure with their families. And safety, satisfaction, and connection needs ebb and flow. But overall, they feel the 4 S's with their families. So just another interesting thing is to think about which version of yourself tends to react more than respond. Is it your work self? Is it your home self? Is it your sister self? Is it your wife self? Is it your mother self, father self? I don't know if we have any men here. So just be considering that it's an invitation for you to be curious about what that's like for you. And then to think about how this tool I'm giving you, this framework, because there's many different ways to implement this framework. It's a framework. It's not a step-by-step curriculum. So the 4 A's can strengthen your ability to be in this green zone and promote responsivity. When a challenge arises and we acknowledge it from a place of balanced calm, when we attune and be curious about our feelings intrapersonally and then interpersonally somebody else, when we adopt a stance of self-regulation, in this case, if we're just working with ourselves, what do we do to self-soothe and self-regulate? Then our brains can be integrated. Our upstairs and downstairs brain are connected, which again, all day long, we can be in a place, we can go here, email that was pretty nasty from our coworker, not full flip, but we went back down because we took a walk around the building and now we feel better. And then later, a family that we're trying to work with has once again canceled a meeting, and then we go back down. So throughout the day, we're in this ebb and flow of feeling reactive versus responsive, right? But if we are having consistent opportunities to feel and utilize the sense of safety, satisfaction, and connection, we're less likely to fully flip and react. So the 4 A's help us activate the social engagement system. Again, Steve Porges' work versus fight, flight, freeze, or faint behaviors. So we're activated to respond rather than react in socially engaging ways to get our needs met. We connect versus protect. So one of the things that's been so interesting for me and sad watching what has transpired with racial injustice over decades, obviously, but just specifically in this past year, is to be seeing all the ways that people have to be feel like they need to be in protect mode versus connect mode, because when they've connected, they've been dismissed, denied, marginalized, abused. So it saddens me so much to watch these divides amongst groups, political factions, racial, because it's like, it's not safe to be with you. You know, it's not safe to connect with you and try to work on my differences. I have to protect from you, and just see what role that's played for you. Right. And it's really saddened to see if we can look at it through that lens of that, wow, those people's safety, satisfaction, and connection needs are not being met over decades, right? Just, it's incredible. So just think about that for yourself, and think about what experiences over your course of your lifespan helped you feel safe, satisfied, and connected, so that you could approach, avoid, and attach in appropriate ways and build the green zone setting of your brain. And if, as you realize, you can't go backwards and re-experience, but you can use the compassionate gaze of understanding to then go forward and call in what you need now. And I'm hoping to give you, a couple practices here that you can start with, although, so they're necessary, but they won't be sufficient in terms of what can you do to build the green zone. Okay, so now we're going to go into our first breakout group. I forgot to mention last time the reason I call this mindset before method instead of just breakout group. It might be obvious to you, but I'll say it in case it's not. The way our state of mind in relationship to anything we're trying to learn impacts our ability to, one, absorb the learning, and then two, take things from learning to practical application. So this is why some of the prompts I have are about your values, your perceptions, and beliefs. If I'm saying this to you, what do you believe about what I'm saying? How does this bump up against your values, perceptions, and beliefs? What's your state of mind in relationship to what I'm telling you before you really look at, okay, how am I going to use it? Okay. If anyone has a question about that, let me know. All of you have this slide in your PDF handout. You have a handout that was electronically sent to you. That is the PowerPoint. And then Bree has now just put a link to it in the chat in case you can't find your PDF. So you're going to go to your breakout rooms now. And we're going to have 15 minutes total in the breakout group, 14 minutes and then a minute countdown before you pop back in. And just like we did last time, I want you to consider these prompts to help us guide the conversation, keep us on track. Right? There's a lot that's probably coming up. And then if there's no expectation you have to participate, it's an invitation to step in and step out. And then I'm going to stay out of the way. But if you have any questions, you can ask Bree or I. We're here, but we're just letting you have your privacy in your groups. Okay.
And when I open this, you're just going to be put into the room. You won't even have a button that pops up. So just be aware of that. And then the ask for help button should be at the bottom of your screen if you need help. All right, are we ready to go?
Whoops, one more thing. Nancy brought up a great point. Nice catch, Nancy. This mindset before method, I moved it up so it's later on in your packet. So the next slide that's in your packet is different from this, but it's there. It's just look further down. I think it's like, it was like slide, it was right after what do you do notice. Did you guys get it? I changed things around based on timing. Yeah, good. Okay, great. Thanks, you guys. Go ahead, Bree.
All right.
Lower in the room. Okay. Yeah, so had suggested she exit out of her room. Okay, and then you've got Kim and Maureen that are still in your
Laura, you're still muted.
Good thing Bree's here. Muted myself. So I
I
hope that
had no idea how long you had been talking, and I'm like, oh my gosh.
could have been days. Could have been. I'm used to just chatting on with no response. No, I'm just kidding. So I hope that was value added for you guys. And in a perfect world, I would now have time to just unravel and kind of figure out how that went for you and ask more about it. Or I would have been there in the room, so I would have been part of it. I'm having trouble with my earbuds today. But I have a problem, I have to confess. So I'm doing a little confession right now. One of my weaknesses is I over offer. I tend to put too much in my trainings. And so right now I'm running behind on time. I wish I had another hour with you guys. So here's what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna move some stuff that I was gonna do this time into next time. It fits. So for those of you who are coming next time, great. If not, you have the information, the slides I'm going to shift. But for somebody who's following along in the slides, I'm now jumping a couple of slides ahead. And we're going to be talking about the 4 A's starting with self, because I want to give you guys 2 practices to use to implement the 4 A's. I want you to leave here with those practices. So I apologize for the shift, and hopefully you can forgive me, and we'll just shift gears and hope if you found it value added, hopefully that will feel good. If there's any questions from the breakout groups, here, I'll pause here first. If there were questions that came up that you need my help with, is there anything? Great. If you think of anything, just let me know. The way I like to talk about the work I do is teaching and parenting based on science, not habit. A lot of us are doing what we're doing based on habit, and I try to invite some of the science into it. So the science in this case of the brain, neuroscience, and then things like interpersonal neurobiology and other science research to try to help us be more mindful and be more intentional, and also use evidence-based practices. We all know that, right? So the idea is, how can we use these 4 A's to navigate challenges from the green zone? How will they help strengthen and our ability to respond to the green zone? Because you guys were asking for that. Like, how can I become more responsive? So let's look at these 4 A's again, one more time. We acknowledge, you're going to invite yourself in perpetuity now to acknowledge you're having a challenge. You may have learned to not acknowledge, to just rush through, to just move on. I'm inviting you to consider, is there an opportunity that sometimes, much of the time, most of the time, maybe all the time for some of you, you will pause to acknowledge the challenge. Now that we've mentioned some of the benefits to that. So just pause to be present with what is, without dismissing, denying, distracting, or fixing. And as you're doing that, I'm going to add in, notice and invite your inner critic or inner fixer to step back. So what he or she might sound like is, you shouldn't feel this way. You should know better. Come on, other people have it worse. Why are you being such a baby? So some of us have that voice in our head, which is super critical of ourselves. And sometimes we feel like it motivates us and it keeps us from dwelling or wallowing. But unfortunately, it can be overdone. And when we get to that reacting to that inner critic, it can activate some behaviors that aren't so healthy for us, okay? And instead of responding to that inner critic or reacting to that inner critic or inner fixer, just try to get a 360 view before you take any action, right? By attuning. And I'm going to ask you, again, this is all about you today, right? Attune to your perspective first. We're very good at trying to attune to others' perspectives. That's probably why you're in the job you're in part. You're really good at connecting with people and attuning to their perspective, perhaps. But I'm going to invite you to strengthen your ability to intrapersonally attune, which is what the theme has been today. What's the story of my experience right now in relationship to whatever challenge is arising in this moment? What's my story about this? That includes identifying, understanding, and expressing to yourself your thoughts, your feelings, your body sensations, because the body keeps the score. connected to your safety, satisfaction, connection needs. So part of your story is, I don't feel emotionally safe right now, or I'm feeling dissatisfied, and this is an ongoing issue with this person or in this situation. So just being real with yourself and allowing yourself to consider your story without trying to change it. Don't rush to change. First, just acknowledge it. And also considering your drives. Well, I'm avoiding. Yeah, I'm avoiding because I don't feel safe, satisfied, or connected. Or I'm approaching in this way. And then your settings and zones. Oh, I know what's happening. I'm reacting because I don't feel connected. And I'm avoiding this person because they haven't been safe in the past. That's what's happening for me. We want to develop the neural circuitry of the green zone. When you attune, I mentioned it's the prefrontal cortex, is Leslie believe where it's housed. So you're strengthening the neural networks in this part of your brain, which is where the green zone is housed. Now, we don't want to forget about others. So you activate your interpersonal attunement in such the same way. Even if you're not talking to someone, you might consider, just while you're by yourself, what's that other person's story? Oh, now that I look at that teacher in the classroom, besides just me thinking that her behavior was inappropriate, I could also consider her story. How often were her safety, satisfaction, connection needs met? Oh, she's in her reactive setting. I wonder why. I don't like it, but I wonder why. And then what does this all mean to me? So the story I'm telling myself is this teacher X, Y, and Z, or my coworker X, Y, and Z. And a lot of time that story you're telling yourself is, I'm not good enough. It's not safe to feel my feelings. My needs don't matter. I'm not worthy. I should know better. So these are some of the negative cognitions that flavor our stories, that become our states, that become our traits. So the story where I tell ourselves activates certain states in our brain that can become traits over time. And as you're doing this, what you're doing is you're adopting a stance of self-regulation. So for those of you who said you get anxious, worried, obsessed, stressed, you get overly activated, emotionally dysregulated, these 4 A's can start to help you build a framework for regulating, right? It's going back to Tina Payne Bryson and Dan Siegel. We name it to tame it. And you can do this all by yourself. Of course, you can do this with an attuned other as well. If you have a trusted person, a sister, a pastor, a coach, a friend, maybe even one of your adult children, and you feel felt when you're with them, this is something you can do with them too, that you can take the lead to being like, no, I need to tell my story. I need someone, an attuned other, to help consider my story. But I do this with myself all the time. So the idea is we're noticing, naming, and normalizing, not dwelling. When we know how to skillfully work with our interior landscape, I promise you will not step in quicksand. One of the reasons we end up dwelling or getting stuck is because we don't have a skillful way to navigate. And then asking yourself, what do I need? Not what does he need? Not what do I need to do for her, but what do I need to feel safe, satisfied, connected, to be able to respond and not react, to be in the green versus red or blue. And then considering, what resources do I have to bring to bear to meet those needs? Who might I approach to help, avoid because they deplete my needs, or connect with? So this is taking what you learned last time and implementing it for yourself. It's just an update in addition to some of the 4 A's. Okay. This will take, in order to do this, you're going to have to use your attention with intention. In short, that means you're being mindful, and there's no shortcut. I had a client tell me the other day, can you just give me like the fast food version of how to get this done? No, I can't. It's ongoing every day, learning to acknowledge, attune, adapt, adopt, and ask. But what I can give you is a couple of strategies to get you started. Many of us learned that feelings mean fault and that we don't notice and name, we just move on. It's cross-cultural. I hear it all the time from most people. I've heard some version of the story. No, I was taught to not notice and name. I was taught to just move on. I was taught to just dial it in, just shut it down. So I was here listening to Brene Brown's podcast the other day, Unlocking Us, and she said something really, what I thought was powerful way to say it, as she finds always powerful ways to say things. When we name and own hard things, it does not give them power. It gives us power. And this may not resonate for you right now yet. But my invitation is to consider, if you had a framework to notice and name, could it possibly help you feel this power she's alluding to, rather than feeling powerless? One of the reasons we feel powerless is we don't have the skills yet, or we have them and we're not able to perform them all the time because our safety, satisfaction, connection needs aren't met. So I'm going to show you and offer you one strategy to help you with a key component of the 4 A's. And to me, the most important skill of any of the tools that I teach, and the hardest for people to learn, is attuned interactions. And the hardest of the 2 types of attunement, in my observation over 3 decades, is intrapersonal attunement, people attuning within. So I'm going to give you one practice I teach my clients and see if it helps you. Okay? And this practice is going to help you acknowledge, it's attunement, but it's going to help you to acknowledge whatever arises. It's going to help you be present with what is, which people were saying they wanted help with too. It's going to help you notice, name, and normalize. So the practice that I'm going to teach you is called SIFT, S-I-F-T. Daniel Siegel, here he is again, Dan showed up. Daniel Siegel, in his work with interpersonal neurobiology, which is the field he created a field, just that, based on a confluence of research across different fields. And it's what I practice in therapy, and I bring it to this work. This is his practice that I'm teaching you. All credit goes to him. And then I'm going to ask you to notice what we're doing for your mindset as we do this. We're asking you to have a Cole state of mind. What does that mean? Dan is known, I have a problem with over putting stuff in trainings. Dan says he has a problem with acronyms. I love the acronyms personally because they help me remember. So hopefully they'll help you remember. Cole mindset means as you're interpersonally attuning, you're tuning inward. You're doing so not from the inner critic or inner fixer. You're doing so with curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love. That can be hard. Many people, in my experience working with them, when they do go inward, shame, blame, judgment become hard on themselves. And then we're going to ask you, I'm going to teach you how to sift your mind. I'm going to help you tune into the S's for bodily sensations, any images that might arise, feelings, and thoughts. S-I-F-T. This is the music of the mind that can inform your brain, and your brain informs these 4 things. So your brain sends information to help you feel your body sensations, to create images, to develop feelings and thoughts. And your mind also can activate bodily sensations, images, feelings, and thoughts. The mind and brain impact each other. So this practice is a mindfulness practice where we're tuning into the music of the mind with openness, curiosity, acceptance, and love. Just a little thing to note, a disclaimer of sorts, but also just a way for us to orient ourselves. Sometimes, especially if you're not practiced, when we tune inward, feelings may seem more intense at first. So right now you're having feelings, and if you're paying attention to me, you may not be noticing your feelings. But when you pause, you may notice and go, whoa, didn't know that was there. Or a body sensation, right? Or a thought. Most of the time our thoughts are ever present with us and we're not attuning to the feelings and bodily sensations as much, but they're always there. So just to know that feelings might feel more intense at first, but that's not an invitation to shut it down then. Unless you feel like you're out of control and you're like, I've got to move on because this is hijacking me. This practice, when done over time, is meant to be able to, oof, I feel that. But the rhythm of the practice is to help you be able to stick with it instead of stuff it. We're going to notice a name with loving kindness, compassion, and non-judgment, which will help with that cold state. Some people go, well, how do I get in a cold state? Just keep the mantra of, I'm not judging, I'm being loving, I'm being kind, I'm being compassionate to myself. And this will help you normalize. And then other things you can do when you practice this SIFT is you can journal your experience. When we journal, we use the left and right hemispheres of the brain to stay in balance, to regulate ourselves. Journaling is very helpful. You can speak with a trusted other. And two other practices that I invite people to do as they SIFT is place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly, which is below your navel. Some people don't like to touch their belly, so that's fine. You can put two hands on your heart and then see which hand feels better. For some of my clients, they put their right hand on top. For some, they put their left hand. What helps you? And you put gentle pressure there. That kinesthetic touch can be soothing to the nervous system. And then noticing your breathing as you do it. Okay? So you don't have to know anything right now. I introduced the concept, but now I'm going to guide you through it. Okay? So if you're up for it, again, this is an invitation. If not, just sit quietly, please. And I'm going to guide you through sifting your mind. So to do so, if you're open to it, once again, just close your eyes, or if that's uncomfortable, just cast the spotlight of your attention or your gaze onto the floor. Just soften your gaze. And just notice the breath at first. You've already begun to intrapersonally attune. Your breath is always there. You're just casting the spotlight of your attention to it now. Now I'm going to invite you to shift your gaze to any bodily sensations that you're having in this moment. What do you notice? You may feel your lower back against your chair, your feet on your floor. Just notice, don't judge. What sensations arise? If you've located a sensation, I invite you to free yourself from noticing that sensation and scan your body for others. Just shift your gaze. Scan your whole body, toes, knees, legs, hips, and so on. Maybe up through your belly to your chest. Notice your heart, shoulders, even your head and neck. As you're noticing and naming your bodily sensations to yourself, just invite the breath to go anywhere you think your body might need it. And now see if you can notice any images that are arising, any pictures in your mind, whether you can visualize them or there's just a knowingness. You may imagine an errand you have to do later. You may picture yourself in a conversation with a coworker earlier. Are there any images that arise? Maybe an image of you going running later because you notice your body is feeling like it needs exercise. Just notice. And now, what feelings might be present for you at this time? Emotions. You feeling annoyed by this practice? Curious? stressed. Feelings are one word, not a phrase. Be curious about your feelings now. See if you can allow yourself to just sit with those feelings and give yourself permission to feel them without fixing them. And this may be where you need to put your hand on your heart and your belly. I invite you to do so if that feels good. And just offer yourself some soothing touch. And finally, shifting your attention to any thoughts that might be arising. I'm sure they were always there. You may have been noticing before, but now particularly focus. What are the stories in your mind right now? Just allow them to be there and give them your full attention. Be present with them. And when you're ready, in your own timeline, just take another deep breath in and out and come back into the room. Our brief experience with SIFT is meant to be an introduction to how this practice may or may not serve you. But it is for everyone, regardless of how you feel about it, an invitation to intrapersonally attune. You just did it. And then I would invite you to journal. What was that like for you? What did you notice? So noticing, naming, and normalizing, and see if you could do so without judging yourself. I shouldn't feel that way. I should be more present. Oh, my mind goes all over the place. I couldn't do it. I'm not good enough. Does anyone want to share what that was like for them? Intrapersonally attuning with SIFT. Were you able to stay in a cool mindset? Difficulty? Anyone want to share? Calming for you, Kate. Excellent. Not for everyone. That practice does not calm everyone. For some people, that can be agitating because we live looking outward most of the time. We're habituated to it. Going inward can be challenging. I want you to be compassionate. Nice, Rachel. Slightly difficult at first. It is difficult. It may be a new muscle. That doesn't mean you've never thought about your feelings. You've never thought about your thoughts. Of course you have. But to sit, to dedicate, I think we only did it for 4 minutes maybe, to dedicate just 4 minutes of your time to only doing that, not a typical practice for many people. Noticing the sensations was the easiest. The rest was more challenging. Oh, interesting, Michelle. For many people, noticing the bodily sensations is the hardest. It's called interoception, I-N-T-E-R. It's one of our senses we don't talk about. And a lot of people are not really good at noticing and naming their bodily sensations. It's just because we aren't used to doing it. And for people, especially people who have been through trauma, we tend to live a little distance from our bodies anyway, because your body keeps the score, and tuning into bodily sensations can be challenging. And then also a lot of people have a challenging relationship with their body because of pain, weight, whatever experience you've had living in your body. Yeah, nice. It felt good to think about me and only me for a bit. Nice, Laurel. I invite you to do that more often. I know it can be hard. A lot of people count on us. I have the same thing. All right, that's one example. Free, you could do it. You don't have to order from Lakeshore. You don't have to get any materials. You don't have to get on Amazon. You just have to carve the space out. And everybody tells me I don't have time for it. That was 4 minutes. You have time for it. And then you deserve to make the time for it. Practices like this, intrapersonally attuning in any way as part of the 4 A's, will help you decrease your stress over time because it helps you balance out your nervous system. Okay? Now, going deeper with that, I want you to really focus on co-regulation. Thanks for giving us permission. You're welcome. Yeah, you do have time for it. Any time you spend on social media, just kind of transfer it over to that, or not. So starting with self, adopting a co-regulation stance. So this is the other thing. We not only sometimes have difficulty just tuning inward because we're always tuning outward. When we turn inward, what do we do with that? What are our self-soothing practices, or co-regulating, meaning regulating with yourself? It's really self-regulation, but regulating with yourself so you can co-regulate with others. How do you talk to yourself, your inner critic? Going back to that, because the voice in our heads is the thing that tends to destabilize us the most if that voice is an inner critic, which comes in part from the voice that others have talked about us with. So there's a phrase, Len Vygotsky said, thought is language turned inward. So the way we think about ourselves tends to come in part from the language we've heard about ourselves turned inward. You're no good. You don't try. You don't listen. You're not trying. You're not being good. You're not sharing. You're not taking turns. You're not doing your homework. You're lazy. You know better. You can do better than that. So over time, that becomes our inner critic. And it can be overdone. It can be unhealthy for us. So what are some of the self-soothing things that you can do to activate a cool state of mind? I'm going to give you these phrases. Again, it may seem pedestrian, it may seem simple, but when used repeatedly for yourself and then for others as well, these phrases can signify signals of welcome, help you feel safe, satisfied, and connected. You may not be able to control what happens out here, but you can control your response to it. So when you go inward and you notice maybe like I have osteoarthritis, I'm like, oh, crackers, there's that hip, right? That prevents me from doing yoga the way I want to. I'm 52, I'm not 25. Then I think, oh, hold on. No wonder I feel that. My body just genetically got arthritis. No wonder I'm achy. Right? Or that makes sense. That makes sense that I get upset about that because I really love doing yoga and I can't do yoga the way I used to before. Oh, I understand. I see you, Laura. I hear you. I feel you. Versus what I may get from others. Oh my God, you're still a great yogi, girl. Oh my God, don't worry about it. You still look great. It's not about that. It's about how I feel. Yeah. Whew, no wonder. Just even saying to yourself, no wonder, is not an excuse. You're not making excuses for yourself. You're not inviting yourself to dwell. You're inviting yourself to notice, name, and normalize what is in the present moment so you can find the freedom to move on from there. So it's not that we don't move on. I keep living my life even when I notice, name, and normalize, but I do so from more of a balanced place rather than a rush to fix it. Because if we rush to fix it, we may leave something behind. I read this morning that emotions are the body's response to the brain. Kept going back to that thought. Yes, feeling curious and satisfied with learning to, oh, I'm really happy, Mary. Yeah, emotions are the body's response, but I wouldn't say to the brain because the brain is enskulled in, we have a heart brain and our gut brain. So the emotions are the body brain's response, and the enskulled brain's response. But I think maybe what that article meant is the body keeps the score, that we store our emotions there, and that definitely our bodies can come from the gut, the enteric nervous system, the gut and the heart. You ever have a gut feeling, or do you ever feel sick to your stomach and have to go to the bathroom when you're super nervous? Or does your heart ever get really activated when you're anxious or upset or excited? So we have neurotransmitters around our heart. We have a nervous system in our heart and our brain. So it's believed from interpersonal biology, we have an enskulled brain, a heart brain, and a gut brain. But it's similar to what they were saying, whatever article you read. Different scientists have different opinions. The idea is we definitely feel our emotions in our body for sure. And I'm trying to help you have a way to self-soothe when you feel them. From there, you can start to ask yourself what you need again. So this is implementing the 4 A's, and then start to create a plan for resilience. But I want to invite you to consider that resilience or grit. People talk about this all the time. I do whole trainings on this. It doesn't come from being hard on yourself. We were sold this bill of goods and it's not true. It comes from skillfully navigating through hard things while caring for yourself. What would happen if you cared for yourself through the hard rather than got hard on yourself through the hard? And then Jay Nelson, the author of Positive Discipline, said it really well about children. Where did we get the crazy idea that children need to feel bad in order to do good? Whew, just let that absorb. And then those children who were made to feel bad under the auspices of feeling good, then develop an inner critic feeling bad about themselves, and they carry that with them into adulthood. It becomes a habit of mind. Let's not do that to the next generation. Okay. So I want to pause here and find out any feedback about what we just covered. What's your sense of how that might, these two practices might impact your ability to acknowledge, attune, adopt, and ask? Anyone have a sense? Great. It's empowering. Oh, good, Emily. I'm glad. Reframing, really nice, Maria. It's so true. And I like the idea of even just calling it reframing instead of fixing, changing, anything. I always call it updating, like updating our practices, because it's also, we don't want to shame and blame the people that came before us that may have impacted this way of being in our brains and minds. That's not going to serve us in the end. I want you to just keep the focus on you, and reframing is a great way to do that too. Yeah. So Katie, that idea about how to remind yourself to look inward and ask myself, what do I need? I may have some ideas if I knew you. So this is where it's not one size fits all, right? Everyone wanted from the feedback last time, how do I remind myself not to do the 4 Ds and to do the 4 As? That's interesting. What in the past has worked for you to help you create a new habit? What do you know about yourself that will help you update, reframe, and remember? So some people set a watch. Some people have visual cues. Some people set a certain day of the week where they practice it for 4 weeks and then they try to make it become a habit. There's myriad ways to try. So for some people, it's visual cues. Absolutely. Yep. And if I was in therapy with you, that is what we would try to figure out, how to make that meaningful for you. But how it works for you versus Anne versus Kathy versus Kathleen or Joan, I don't know. This is where we work with humans, not Hondas, right? It's different for everybody. Yeah. And that's what's hard when we work with families too. It's not one size fits all. We have to get to know the family and get to know the children, to care providers, children, family, the adults, the children, to be able to figure out, how's this going to work for this particular person? Not one size fits all, but good question. Okay. So somebody put a very good comment on my last reflection form that I didn't give you guys time in the session because I ran out of time because of my problem with time management. So I am trying to give at least 7 minutes at the end of today to do that reflective form, because you're right, it's your time. You put this time on your calendar to do this work. I shouldn't ask you. It's unfair of me to ask you to do it outside of there. So we're going to close down with 2 more practices. First, I'm going to give you an opportunity to pause to process and check in with what you've learned today. So Bree's going to put a link in the chat. You have the link in your handout as well. It's called Pause to Process. I'm going to put it up on my screen here. That's not it, but it's in the link. And this is a way for you just to check in for understanding. So if you would take a few moments now to click the link and to check in about your learning so far today. For those of you who have finished the pause to process, I'm going to ask Bree to put the other link in. You can move on to your reflection form. If you have not finished, you can keep going or you can revisit it later. It's up to you. I certainly offer the reflection as an option. It's not a have to. And if you would rather use your time to finish the pause to process, that is absolutely for you to decide. I'm going to be silent until for another 3 minutes or so while you do this, and then just offer a closing goodbye.
Hi, Ms. Fish. This is Ollie. Could you please show on the screen the information that you just removed for the survey? Thank you.
It's posted
You're
in the chat
welcome.
again.
Yeah, and the link is in the chat, Ollie. It says reflections, and there's a link right there. If that's helpful.
And I'm going to take these next couple seconds here to remind you guys that you are going to get that email with that survey in it, and be sure to fill that out so you can get your certificate for participating today. So just don't forget to do that. That's what's important here.
We have about 2 more minutes. So in another minute, I'm just going to pop on and bring us to a close as you're working. And again, I honor your time. So if that, I keep forgetting what time it is for you guys. At 3:30, if you have to shut down, please do. These links for the pause to process and the reflection form will be there in perpetuity. You can revisit or not. It's your time. I don't want to take advantage of it. So to come to a close, I just want to thank you all for your participation. We'll be continuing this in our next installment about navigating uncertainty with families. And I will use some of what I had planned to do today then, because it fits. Bring in your questions, your reflections, anything that you need. And I just want to close with this Carl Jung quote: your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who look outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. I find this counter to the message a lot of us received about looking outward all the time. So just an interesting quote to consider. And then, as usual, if you have any need to connect with me, just remember on the reflection forms, they're anonymous. So if you ask me a question there, I can't answer you. So if you want to connect with me directly, here's all the ways to get in touch with me. And again, I really appreciate your time and participation today. And I hope you find this information useful and helpful. Please use it with compassion for yourself, non-judgment for yourself, and loving kindness, so you can do so with others as well. I appreciate you guys. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you next Friday.
Thank you so much, Laura. Can everybody turn their cameras on and we can say thank you to Laura? She did such a great job and we love having her here.
Thanks, Bree.
Yes. So thank you so much. Oh,
Thanks,
look at all
guys.
those saves.
Thank
Thank
you.
Laura.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's lovely to see you. Thank you so much.
Have a good
Happy
week,
Valentine's Day.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Sift for yourself on Valentine's Day. I know it's not very sexy, but it's, tune inward.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Have a great weekend.